I know leaders feel like they have to have all the answers, have to have everything figured out. After all, how do I give my team confidence if I don't lead with confidence? But hear me out. What if we didn't pretend to have it all together? That's our question today. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Open Door. I'm Chris, and today I'm joined by my dear friend Amy Savage, a leadership development consultant and director at FlashPoint Leadership. Her firm works with organizations to develop confident, capable leaders at every level so people, teams, and organizations can work better together. Amy has spent 2 decades in and around leadership. She's ran her own consulting business for 16 years, built teams, coached executives, and she has a special place in her heart for helping develop women in leadership. And most importantly, she believes the best leaders aren't the ones who have everything figured out. They're just the ones who keep showing up. Amy, welcome to Open Door.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Chris. I think one of the things I've always loved about you is your willingness to just jump in and try something new. And it's really cool that you're doing this podcast. So happy to be here.
I appreciate that. And thanks for jumping in with me too.
You bet.
It's always good to have a
We'll
buddy.
do it.
Well, I want to dive in here. I know one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this specific podcast is because you've built a career around people centered leadership, and it's always inspired me. So, first, can you define what that term means so our audience has perspective?
Yeah, sure. There's probably lots of different ways to think about this. I'll just kind of give you my perspective on it. I think the short version is ultimately it's about caring about your team members holistically so that they're able to do their best work. So at the end of the day, that might look like caring about how capable and confident people feel and supporting their development and growth. But I think it also is this element of caring about their personal well-being and also the kind of experience that they're having at work. So do they feel valued and known? Do they feel like they're a part of something meaningful? And I think, a hang up that we have to look out for in people-centered leadership is sometimes we can value what people do for us more than the people themselves.
Mm,
And especially when we're operating in a business environment that's driven by, customer demands, results, tight time frames, you can start to get stressed out. And it's like, hey, where's this thing that I need, right? Not
mm,
like, oh, hey, how are you doing with the load? And,
right.
what's going on in your life? So I think we can over index on that piece sometimes. I know I certainly have. But I think with people centered leadership, the reality is like when you value people, they then place a high value on doing a good job at the work that they're doing. So
Mm,
it's sort of this like virtuous circle that happens. So the bottom line is, I think for me, when I care authentically about people, I garner trust. And I think when you've got people's trust, there's like just no limit to what you can do. So that's everything. So that's a little bit about how I would talk about that.
I appreciate that. I think a lot of business owners hear that and think, okay, great, I get it. I can't afford that right now. So, for you, what's the ROI on really investing in this perspective?
Yeah. Well, I would say you can't not afford it. You got to invest in it. So,
Sure.
yeah, like could being people focused require dollars from your budget for things like technical training or, helping the team celebrate, feel recognized? Sure. But I think what it really requires of us is our time. And some people might be like, I'd rather pay dollars than give my time because I'm so busy. But I think in terms of ROI, you get several critical things, especially when you're investing your own time. Is a high performance. So when people feel valued and cared for, they're going to give you their discretionary effort and exceed expectations. So you get high performance from this. And high
Mhm.
performance, the second thing equals better client outcomes. So when employees aren't spending time worrying about self protecting or fighting for a place at the table and all that emotional energy,
Mhm.
they can use that time and energy to foster more creative solutions and have more client impact. So the client is actually also experiencing something good. And then I think the last thing I would say, and I'm sure there's like, we could probably talk about this for an hour, but I would say increased trust and accountability. Like
Mm,
that is a huge piece of ROI because it does ultimately result in dollars because your
sure.
team is functioning better, right?
Sure.
So when you have increased trust, you have increased feedback and transparency. And the more feedback that we're offering each other on a team, the more we're actually driving accountability. And that's a game changer. I think people can shy away from the word accountability, like, oh, I don't want to have an accountability conversation with so and so, right? But it's like when you create this culture of trust, it naturally follows that, of course, we're going to help hold each other accountable to what we're driving towards, right? And it becomes actually this cool collective thing instead of like, oh, you're in trouble and we need to have like some serious conversation. So I think those
Sure.
are the three that I would mention. So high performance, better client outcomes, and increased trust and accountability.
Thanks for breaking that down. I just over the years, both personally and professionally, have watched you just develop into a great leader, right?
Oh,
And I
gracious.
know that this is also your profession, but
Yeah,
I'd love to know how did you get on this path? I know you didn't set out to be in leadership development, right?
I
So
sure
can
did.
you yeah, can
In
you
fact,
walk
I'm
us
like,
back?
"Wait, like, that's a
Yeah.
career people have? What is this?" No, so I started out studying communications at the University of Cincinnati, and so, like, have no background in leadership development at all, from, my education. So out of college, I got a job at a customer service center and a leadership development company, named Tom Peters Company. And I was working in a service center with my mom and a couple other women. So it was just like female heyday out there in the service center. And so what we were doing was like, I was processing 360 leadership assessments. I'm packing up workshop materials and shipping them out so that like the facilitators and coaches who were doing the direct work had everything that they need.
Sure.
And so for 4 years, I really like cut my teeth on the customer service aspect of the job. Really loved that. But I also got to start to hear from people who were doing the direct delivery, right? Like the facilitators and coaches out in the field would come back and they were talking about everything that was happening in teams and organizations as a result of the work. And I was like, hold up, like we're like they're actually seeing transformation as a result of these workshops or coaching engagements. And so I started to become intrigued. Long story short, change in ownership at the organization, and my mom and one other woman and I start decided to start our own business doing the exact same thing. And I think we thought, well, maybe we'll be able to earn enough money to have a part-time salary. And I think we realized very quickly, oh, nope, this is actually a viable business and we're all working full time. And so we built it from there. It was really we had no idea what we were doing. Like none. I mean, you know how it is. You've
So
built your own
honest.
thing.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
like you're having to build in like systems and processes for everything. And essentially we're three equal partners all doing the exact same thing. And so it's just like so much communication was needed. So I mean, we slugged it out for years to get it to the point where it was like a well-oiled machine.
Sure.
And then you get to the point where you're like, I have got to, we got to hire, right?
Mm,
And
mhm.
and then that changes things. And I know we'll get to that in a little bit. But essentially, about 10 years into running the business from an operational standpoint, I had a few colleagues approach me and just encourage me to really step out and
Oh,
start to
wow.
do the actual delivery and coaching. I mean, literally, when they said that to me the first time, I was like, I'm sorry, what are you smoking? Like, I have no formal education in this. Like, oh, you're crazy, right? But
Sure.
the reality is, like, they actually saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I think this is actually one of the joys of leading is that we get to do
Mhm.
that for other people.
Mm,
We get to
totally.
like just watch them and go, hey, you've got this thing. Like you might not know it, but you do. Like, how can I help you develop that? So eventually I pursued certifications to help me do just that. And I think I really committed to the work of leadership development when I got clear about what was my own why for doing it.
Mm.
And I think it's just this. It's that we spend all of our time at work for the most part. And so we deserve to work in healthy environments where we can contribute at our best and not carry all of the stress and angst that comes from a toxic environment home to the people that we love the most,
It's a
right?
good word. Yeah.
We just deserve that. So yeah, I really don't think I ever would have made this shift if it hadn't been for those two people. And I will forever be grateful. Like they literally changed the course of my
Oh, wow.
career and also just sort of the meaning and purpose that I find in the work. And now I get to do that for other people, but also from a parenting perspective,
Mm.
too. It's a really beautiful thing, and I know your kids well, obviously, and so if you'll humor me, I'll tell just a quick story about my oldest daughter, Ella, who's now 23, which is crazy. But she developed a love for singing at a very young age. And she was good at it. Like this girl was on pitch and like, but she was terrified to stand in front of us and sing. And so she would go around the corner and we would all sit in the family room and she would just belt out this song, but like she couldn't have anybody look at her, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so over the years, we're just like, honey, you've got this. Like you have an actual real gift. You've just got to like lean and find your courage and just do it. So long story short, she went to school for jazz vocal and she now is like on stage wailing with several bands and like just no fear. She's fearless, right? And I often think like what if my husband and I hadn't encouraged her, right? And
Mhm.
been like, hey, we see this thing.
Sure.
Um, and so I just think it's such a gift that we get to do that for people. And I'm certainly on the receiving end of somebody doing that for me. So do you think about somebody? Like, do you feel like there's somebody coming to mind who's done this for you? Like, I just love to
Oh,
hear.
man. I love that. It's such a good question. I think when you're speaking, one of the things that comes to mind specifically is people that have helped lead us to where we're going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whether it was starting a business or, I'm a musician myself and it's easy to practice and play in your room. It's another to get up in front of people and lead
Yeah.
yourself, right?
It
And
really.
so, absolutely, I think there's lots of people that have shown up. I call them accidental apprenticeships of someone
Love.
that's encouraging you to lead on. And the whole point of that is to then pass it to
Yeah.
pass it forward, right? And
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I love in that I see you blend into both your personal life and your professional life is you say all the time that leading an organization is a blend of fear and confidence, right? And
Totally.
that's all of like that's what we're all talking about, whether it's your daughter who's in her 20s now, which is crazy to me,
Yeah.
learning how to sing in front of people, or us learning how to lead in those environments. In
Yeah.
fact, I've heard you say, do it scared every single time, right? And most leadership advice tells you that you need project certainty and you need to fake it before you make it. And
Totally.
so I'm like, what's wrong with that? Like, I would love
Yeah.
for you to break it down because you
Yeah.
hear that all the time is like, don't show weakness, fake it
Yeah.
before you make it, and just push them into that room, right?
Yeah, totally. Listen, I don't think there's actually all that much wrong with faking it till you make it in some circumstances. In fact, like the very first workshop that I facilitated was out in Golden, Colorado. And I mean, this memory is seared in my brain. I remember standing in front of this room and like I had my workbook like this. Like, I mean, it was like in front of my face. And inside my workbook was like a million post-it notes of all the things I was
Oh my
supposed to
god.
say. And God love my mentor who was with me. He was like, Amy, you gotta put that thing down. Like, so
That's
there's
funny.
there's an element of truth to like fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah,
Because people do need to know that we are competent and capable as leaders.
100%.
And so us
100%.
projecting some degree of certainty is absolutely important. But I
Yes.
think just as important is us admitting when we're nervous or
Yeah.
unsure in
Yeah.
certain moments. So that
Yeah.
vulnerability piece. And in fact, I did that like just the other day. I was in a project meeting with my team and we've got a new really large project on our hands and I was telling them like, "Hey, I mean, I could kind of see their eyes starting to get bigger as we're talking about timelines and I was like, listen, I'm a little nervous too about all of these details coming together in the client's time frame. But like the reality is I know we're going to figure it out together and we're going to knock
Mm,
it out of the park, right?
that
So
that right
it's
there.
like it's like I'm also being transparent about my fears, but I'm also like we've got this, right? So
Yeah.
the reality is like we're not fooling anybody. Like our
Right.
teams know that we're human, that they know that we don't have it all together. So I've just found that it pays off to be transparent and vulnerable. And I think it actually builds trust with people. It
Sure.
doesn't erode it,
Sure.
Like
Sure.
even with my own boss, who's our CEO, like when she is vulnerable about concerns or whatever, I don't sit there and go, oh my God, Krista, like you don't have your act together, like I don't think that that's what happens. I think
Sure.
I find my respect for her growing,
Mm.
right?
Mm,
And I also would just add here, maybe Chris, that I think there's a difference between uncertainty and fear,
mm,
because there's like 50 things a day I'm uncertain about, but not necessarily afraid of, right? They're just more like unknowns that
sure,
like we'll figure out.
sure,
But I do think like there are many times when I'm just downright scared to do something, but show
sure,
up anyway.
sure.
Like almost every time that I facilitate a session with a client, there's like this nagging fear, no matter how competent or capable I feel, of like, is this going to be enough? Like, what if they don't like my
Mm,
style? What if I don't meet their expectations in some way? Like, just like I'm always doing things with a little bit of fear, right? And so in those instances, you show up scared every time because not showing up is not an option. And I just have found that when we show up scared and do the thing, I almost always learn something and ultimately end up developing and building my confidence as well as my competence, right?
I
So,
love that. I love that. I also love how you've threaded in like your daughter because a lot of this, we're parents too, right? We're professionals and we're parents, and
totally.
we're leading these little people to lead themselves and be the leaders of tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
And that's a lot of pressure, right?
it
And
is.
so I love how you're speaking to. I tell my kids all the time, bravery isn't the absence of fear.
Yes,
Bravery is being afraid and doing it anyway, right?
100.
Mitigate risk, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, but
yeah,
but you're going to be afraid and you have to push through it. You
yeah,
just made me think of a quick story when I was learning how to
yeah.
play music. I remember my first gig. I had music on the stand. I was playing and the wind picked up and my music just blew away in the wind.
Oh my gosh.
And there I was like,
Oh my
thankfully I had worked through it enough times that I learned, but that was like lesson 1, memorize the music,
oh,
right? Sort of
memorize
thing.
the thing. It's
Right? Or running my first meeting, it's that element of being afraid and doing it anyway. And I think
totally.
we give the optics from the leaders that help us like the fake it before you make it, but more so the confidence of like, hey, I believe in you and you can do this. And we pass it forward.
Totally. Totally.
With that said, you've worked with leaders for a long time, and as we shift gears from the fake it before you make it, what
Mhm.
are some of the things that you feel prevents leaders from being successful? And alternatively, what makes a good leader successful, right?
Yeah.
As you're in all these different environments.
Yeah. Ah, good question. Well, I think, on the preventing side, I think 2 things come to mind immediately. There's again, there's like 50 things we could probably name, but to focus our time, I would say ego and inconsistent leadership behavior. Like, I mean,
Mm,
these are the things that I am coaching people on all the time. And I'll address the ego one first.
sure.
There is simply no place for ego in leadership. There just isn't. There's a place for confidence, but there is no place for your big old ego. So you have to learn how to kick that sucker to the curb and manage it every single day. And I
Mm,
think like there's this interesting dichotomy with leadership is that leadership is not about you as the leader and it's simultaneously all about you. Like, so it's like if you're the leader, you are in service to others at all times. And so in that sense, it is 100% not about you and there's not space to feed your ego or go on a power trip. Like that's not, we don't
mm,
have time for that. But at the same time, it is all about you because your behavior matters and it matters a lot to the people that you lead because
sure.
you are setting the tone for what the culture is like. And we're responsible as leaders to model that positive leadership behavior accordingly. So
Sure.
I
That's
think,
good.
when leaders show up inconsistently with their leadership behavior, it creates chaos, right?
Mm,
So if they are, being super clear with timelines with one person and not at all with others, like it creates noise and friction in the system, right?
sure.
Or if there's some degree of like, oh, Amy's hyper communicating with this one direct report and not really sharing and being transparent with the rest of this. Like, what are the leadership behaviors that we need to practice consistently? And so to answer that question, I wanted to narrow it down. And honestly, there's just no better model than the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. So I actually have 5 practices. If we have time for me to just briefly walk you
Break them
through
down. Break them
is it
down.
like I love this model. It's by Jim Kouzes and Dr. Barry Posner, and they did copious amounts of research. And over several decades, this research continues to be validated. So, what do leaders need to be doing? Number one, model the way. first and foremost. So know what you stand for, what your values are, make sure your actions align with your words. This is really all about your credibility as a leader.
Mm,
And so, do you do what you say you will do? Do you set clear expectations and hold people accountable? You'd better be modeling the behavior that you want to see on the team, right? There cannot be a gap between what you say and what you do, right? And what you
mm,
expect of others. So that's the first piece. And I think is pretty foundational. The second one is inspire a shared vision. And I'm curious to kind of pick your brain on this one if you're game. But inspiring a shared vision out of all five practices is like the most challenging one for
mm.
the millions of people who've taken this assessment, right, in the database. So I find that interesting. And I think it's because of the word shared. I think like if it was just about me forwarding my vision, it would be easier, right? But like when you've got to figure out, hey, what are the shared aspirations that we have together about the future? Like that takes more work.
Mm,
Because what if we're all on different pages, or what if we all see something, a little or value something different? So I think at the heart of this leadership practice is like, are we doing some dreaming together with our teams around what do we collectively think the future could look like for us,
mm,
right?
mm.
It's
Yeah,
not just about me and my view as the leader, but what does the team see? Like it's this notion of like how are we co-creating the future together? And we got to be talking about where we're going. I don't know if
sure,
you're finding
sure.
this in the interview process, but as we interview people for jobs, they're asking us like, well, what's the vision for your company? Like
Yep,
they want to know like is this something I want to even be a part of, right? So and obviously you know this well, as you're leading a company that helps other companies tell their stories, but when leaders can like authentically communicate what's compelling about their work and the real difference that it makes for other people, it fuels engagement and it keeps people committed, like even when times are hard. So
sure,
I,
sure.
I'm just kind of, have you found this to be a struggle, or because of the work that your company does, like, does this come a little more naturally to you? What do you think?
That's a good question. I think, it's all about what's happening in the market too, right?
Mhm.
I think,
Yep.
again, we'll get to this a little bit later, but AI has changed a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So, however, you don't want to kind of keep moving around the pond, throwing in your pole, right? You kind
Yeah.
of have to have some patience. But
Totally.
I do like your approach of a shared vision because it invites people in. I think we overly celebrate the self made man or woman
Yep.
in this country, and it's taken a team of people to endeavor and grow.
Yeah.
So the mark of a really great leader to me is the ability to inspire and for others to co-collaborate in that vision with you, which is really difficult,
Mhm.
by the way, because you have to be accountable, you have to be transparent, and you have to be very, very clear about what that vision is,
Yeah.
right? And so clarity is kindness. So absolutely, because we're shifting and changing. Like we're
Yes.
dynamic people. I'm not the same I was 5 years ago. This company is not the same as
Yeah.
it was
That's right.
5 years ago, right? And so I think a good segue into that would be as I'm looking at the vision of what Red Door was, what it is now, and what I hope it aspires to be, a
Yeah.
lot of that is influenced by the people of that organization,
That's right.
tapping into skill sets, right? And so a part of this is a lot of founders, including myself, are really great at the thing that built their business, right?
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
a really easy way to articulate it, speak about it, and go through the nuances of that. And then one day they have a team, and then
Mhm.
suddenly the job is completely different. And
No.
then how do you make the shift from being the person who does the work to being the person who leads the people who do it?
Mm.
Meaning they're an extension of your left and right hand. So I'm
Yeah.
curious for you, how
Mhm.
do you encourage leaders to make that shift? I know we got into two of those five principles,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Mhm.
there is such
Yeah.
a personal ownership in you're the one that was you wore all these hats, right? I was the sales guy, and then I did this, and then I executed it, and then I delivered, and now you have a team of people. You know, how what suggestions do you have there?
Mhm. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is such a challenge. I know, like when we first started hiring people in our business, it was so hard for me to just, I mean, it was literally like pry my fingers off of the work, right? Like,
Sure.
well, and it's one thing to like coach leaders how to do this. It's another thing to coach founders.
Mm,
It's like there is a little bit of a difference there because it's like I cared so much about this as my company. I know you feel the same way.
Sure.
It feels like
100%.
your
Lot of
baby.
ownership.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And so I had to really learn to do it. And I mean, frankly, I think I did this very poorly. And I fumbled my way through, right? Because like you said, there is a real mindset shift that you have to make from being the doer of the work to the builder of the people who do the work.
Mm,
And I think the key, right? So kind of coming to your question of how do I coach leaders to do this is you have to be super clear about what your new priorities are in this new realm where you have all of these great resources at your fingertips who are going to be able to execute sometimes in a way better than you ever could have, right? Maybe they're specialized in a way that you weren't. And so you've got to be really clear about what your new priorities are and ensure that your work is staying aligned to those priorities. I think what makes that hard is that something will inevitably come up, right? That requires you to get back in the weeds on something. And
mm.
before you know it, you're either like back in the comfort of micromanaging or of spending your time on the wrong things. So you really do have to make a plan and stick to it. I think you can have the best intentions and understanding of what you need to do, but if
Sure.
you do not have something really clearly laid out, it's gonna flop. I
Yeah.
think one thing I wish I had done earlier was ask my team to help keep me accountable when I was inserting myself where I didn't belong.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
That's good.
I mean, the ideal would be that I would be self accountable to that and not have to put that on my team. But I think half the time we don't even realize what when we're slipping back into it,
It's
you
true.
know? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it's like I need the team to be able to be like, Amy, appreciate the intention, but girl, go do this stuff that you need to get done. We've got
Yes.
this, right? Like,
Yes. Yes.
so I think, but I do think that like we have to have a safe enough environment in our culture for our team members to hold their leaders accountable, right? So
Mhm.
easier said than done. I can't rely on my team to tell me when I'm over inserting myself into something. I really need to try to be mindful. And part of that is just asking for feedback and doing all
Sure.
these things that'll help
Sure.
provide visibility. But
Sure.
I think without a structured strategy and plan around our priorities, we don't do this well.
Got
So
it.
I think it's that and just having some sort of accountability to it.
I love that. I love that. I always say, what are the right rooms I need to be in, and what are the rooms I need to get out of, right? And let other people
100%.
run. I I'd love to make a shift because
Yeah.
one of the things I love about your story is one, you're helping other companies and SMBs, like small businesses, thrive, right? In
Mhm.
that leadership kind of performance area.
Mhm.
And you ran a business of your own firm for a while, right? And so for small business owners running teams of 3, 5, 10, where there's no org chart, there's no promotion offer, how do you build ownership and leadership in people when you don't have titles or raises to hand out? How do you
No,
make sure people feel like their work matters when it doesn't show up on their paycheck or their title?
it's so brutal, isn't it? Like, because it's like the financial constraints that we have on us, and we've got such
Yeah.
kick butt team members that we want to reward financially as best we
Yeah.
can. And like, oh, it's just, oh my goodness, it's such a challenge. I think that this is actually taking us back to where we started with people centered leadership because I think there we cannot underestimate the power of consistently expressing the value that people are bringing to our work culture,
Hmm.
to our customers, to the business, right? Like that matters. Like people who don't feel valued don't stick around,
Hmm.
right? They will go where they feel valued. So I also think that when people are connected to the specific difference they make, they feel more intrinsically motivated to continue to elevate their work, and then
Sure.
ownership I think naturally follows. So even when there isn't a pay raise or a title that's at play, I also really have found that creating space for the team, not just you as the leader, but for the team to call out the impact that each other is having in the
Hmm.
environment
I like
can
that.
be really powerful. In fact, if we have a second, I'll share a story. around this. So Dan Smoker is a mutual friend of ours. You know him, my husband's best friend. And he worked at a tech company in Denver. This was years ago. And Dan's a really quiet guy. He he's got this really long beard, always wears aviator sunglasses. You have to know that to understand the story. But he showed up at work one morning, and they were like, "Hey, the CEO wants to see you in his office," which was not really common practice. So Dan's like immediately nauseous, like, I'm going to go lose my job now. He's sick. He walks into the office, and like the entire C-suite and his entire team of peers was standing in this room, and they were all wearing t-shirts that had like Dan's face on them with his long beard and his sunglasses, and it said "Keep calm and ask smoker" on the t-shirt. And each of them just took a few minutes to go around and just express gratitude for
Hmm.
the
I like
impact
that
that
a
Dan
lot.
made on them.
Wow.
I mean, this is a story he'll tell till the end of time. It was so meaningful to him. But I think that like helping people sense that value from the team instead of just the leader is a really cool way to do that. I
Mm,
also think another idea that comes to mind is like you as the leader needing to take action to, even if you don't have pay raises for people, to continue to grow and develop the people in the areas that they've got interest and energy around, right?
sure.
Like if I convey to you like, God, I would love to learn how to do this, like how can I make that happen for you? Because
Mm,
like actually, our CEO just did a webinar recently, and she shared a statistic on that said employees whose managers actively support their development are 11 times more likely to trust them.
mm,
So supporting people's development isn't that doesn't have to equate to a pay raise or a title change, right? But like when you know that someone is invested in your success and in your growth, like that is fostering trust.
hmm,
And I will tell you, like a culture of trust and empowerment is a tough culture to leave just for more money, right?
mm,
Because you're leaving the known for the hope of some more money in your bank account, and then you get
sure.
into the new thing and you go, "Oh my god, like I'm in a really toxic environment. I'm getting paid more money. This isn't worth it to me," right? Because I
Mm,
think the reality is that the quality of our work life impacts the quality of our life.
it's true. It's
And
true.
and so it's too big of a risk to my overall peace, at this point where I am right now, right? If somebody offered me, a bunch more money to come and work, I don't know that I would go, right? It might be tempting because of the dollar signs. But at the end of the day, if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. And that's a price I'm not willing to pay. So I really think that there is a piece where we cannot underestimate the power of creating an environment where people feel trusted and empowered
Mm,
and valued. Like it will keep people. It will keep people. So I see it happen all the time. People stay with a leader who they trust, regardless of like if they could be getting some more money somewhere else. So I think that's an important thing to remember, especially as a small business owner where you might not
sure.
have the funds to be able to do that.
I love that. Thanks for breaking that down. I think if I was a small business owner listening to that right now, that's gold, like gold, right?
It's
Because that
totally
is a constraint is
it is a
trying to
constraint.
figure out how to scale and grow. I would
Yeah.
love to take this in a little bit of a different angle as
Mhm.
well. One of the things that you mentioned, I heard you say, is one of the hardest problems leaders have to deal with is a fit problem, not a performance problem, right? This idea that someone just isn't the right fit for the role, and that
Mhm.
could be hard to deal with on both sides of the
Yeah,
fence, right?
yeah.
So, what makes it hard to act in those situations? And
Mhm.
what's the cost of waiting until they quote unquote figure it out, so to speak? So,
The cost equals too much, Chris. That's what
uh,
the cost is. But we can talk about that. Oh
yep.
man, this can just be so brutal.
Uh huh.
I mean, I've been here myself. You do everything that you can in the hiring process, right? To determine appropriate
Sure.
skill set and fit.
Right.
People sound great in an interview. They look good on paper, but you just won't know, right? Until you get them in and they're working with clients and the team if they're actually a fit. So there's a couple things here, I think. If it's a skill that's missing, I'm a big believer that you can train someone in a skill for the most part, right? And so if it's a skill issue, we tend to give people more time, right, to grow and to evolve into that skill that's needed for the role. And so, if for some reason they can't learn the skill, eventually, you put them on a PIP or you part ways if you have to, or you put them in another role, right? But when their technical skill is there, coming back to the fit piece of this, and they're actually meeting the job requirements, it becomes a much more challenging thing to
Mm,
address, especially the cultural fit,
mm,
right?
mm.
So the cultural fit issue on a team is huge. And I know, when I ran my business, I made the mistake of letting this one person who was damaging our culture stay far too long. And I did that for a few reasons. I did it because I am a perpetual believer in people's ability to change, and I was just going to hold out hope for it, right? So that was the first thing. But also, number two, I hated the idea of conflict, and I just simply
Mm.
didn't want to engage in the tough
Honest.
conversation.
It's honest. Yeah.
But the reality is that when there's someone on your team who is not a cultural fit and they're causing issues to the team dynamic, and you're like, you actually will end up eroding your team's trust in you as their leader because
Mm,
you're avoiding addressing the problem. So even though the problem is actually this person over here, you now have a larger trust issue with your team because they're like, why isn't Amy doing something about this, right? Like,
mm.
it's impacting our work experience, it's impacting our ability to do our jobs well, right? One of the things I've been thinking about lately is I don't actually think it's a bad idea in a job description to also include the behaviors that are expected on the team that they're joining.
Oh, that's good.
Like often I think we will share like our organizational or our team values in an interview, but like, why not be more specific about,
Sure.
hey, here's the behaviors, attitudes that are expected on the team, and these are the kinds of things we don't tolerate. And then
Mm,
it's clear, because let's say you do then have someone with a fit issue, you have something to point back to and hold them
mm.
accountable to and go,
That's good.
hey, we were like pretty explicit about how we treat each other on this team,
Sure.
and
Sure.
you're not showing up that way. And obviously, I'm a huge believer in giving feedback and giving people the chance to course correct, right? But how much time you have to limit it, right? It's like, these are the actions we need to see by this time, and if it hasn't happened, like, I'm like, I just don't think this is the right culture fit for you, right? It's not for
Mm.
us. So there's kind of two different things, right? Like, there's the culture fit, and then there's like a role fit.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and
Yeah.
sometimes if it's a role fit, maybe there's another place on the team or in the organization they can go, right? Maybe they're a cultural fit, but the role's just not working out. But sometimes there's not, and you've got to have that tough conversation. So
Yeah.
I would just say the bottom line is that once your gut or your team starts sounding the alarm on fit, pay attention. Like, immediately pay attention, and don't just wait and hope it resolves itself, because it won't.
That's
It,
good advice.
it just
Yeah.
won't.
I
So
always say that just about issues as a whole, they don't resolve themselves, they compound. And
mm,
it's going to get harder and harder and
yes,
harder and harder down
mhm,
the road. The conflict you were afraid of yesterday is now 10 times worse in the
it is.
future, right? So that's really great advice.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk to you about this idea of psychological safety. You brought this up when we started. And in a small business world, you can do a lot to retain people, but we often can't compete on salaries. So, what
Yeah.
does psychological safety actually give you practically that good keeps good people around? And I know you touched a little bit on this,
Mhm.
right?
Sure.
Of mentioning building that team trust, them
Yeah.
not wanting to leave. But the
Yeah.
true definition of when you're speaking to leaders in organizations and you're using this term psychological
Yeah.
safety, help break that down a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. I think Dr. Amy Edmondson talks about psychological safety as knowing that the team is safe for interpersonal risk taking, right? Dr. Timothy Clark wrote a book called The Four Stages of Psychological Safety, and he defines psychological safety as an environment of rewarded vulnerability. In other words, I can show up with vulnerability, ask for help, say I made a mistake, push back on you, my leader, and know that that vulnerability is going to be affirmed and not punished, right? In some way. So that's what we're talking about here. And I think actually in that same book that Dr. Clark wrote, he talks about 10 core business outcomes. For the sake of time, we're not going to talk about all of those, but I'll talk about a couple of them. So I'm thinking about this in terms of what do the employees benefit from, right? As a benefit of high psychological safety on a team. There's a whole bunch of business outcomes, but when you're
Mm,
thinking about how do we keep good people, I think the first piece is it fosters inclusion. And I know, this word gets thrown around a lot.
sure.
um, but I like to think about inclusion as the feeling that I get when I go to my best friend's house and I just like plop down on their couch and I put my feet up and like I'm not worried one bit about is she going to accept me? What is she going to think about what I'm going to say? Like I'm not doing any emotional rigmarole. I just am who I am, right?
Mhm.
And the freedom that comes with that, I think to be able to have that sense of inclusion and belonging in a work culture is priceless and
Hmm.
it's going to keep people around. So, really that sense of inclusion, you're creating an inclusive climate where diverse voices are respected, valued, and heard, and where people know that they're not going to be penalized in some way for speaking up or speaking out.
Sure, sure.
So it really is creating the space for us to be ourselves. And like life is exhausting enough. I don't need to come to work and feel the exhaustion of trying
Mm,
to just like, who do I need to be now? And how do I need to present myself in this moment? And like, I mean, there's wisdom to some of that, but like it's the emotional bandwidth that it takes to do that all the time. So I think the inclusion piece is really important. Second, the research is showing mental health and wellness. And I'll tell you, Dr. Clark talks about that feeling safe to speak up sort of acts like a stress vaccine.
hmm.
So it prevents these minor frustrations from spiraling into these big mental health issues.
Oh, wow.
And so when we have psychological safety on a team, we are more likely to voice our concerns, which helps lower our anxiety, right? And our chronic stress because we're not bottling it all up.
Sure, sure.
And so it just takes this like I know when I have psychological safety that I can ask for help. I can acknowledge my mistakes without being humiliated or, embarrassed in some way. And so all of that just lightens our mental load. I think all of us right now, to some degree, are already struggling with managing our mental health, just given the world that we're living in. And so we don't need we don't need the work environment to be a place where that then contributes to that struggle. So lastly, I would say the opportunity to truly innovate. Um, comes from psychological safety. And this is exciting for people. Like we all have this desire to contribute, right? And create.
Sure,
That's like
sure.
human instinct. And so we know that innovation flourishes in a psychologically safe environment. And so just the ability that I know that I can unleash my creativity, I can take risks, I can try new things. It really creates this energizing environment that we
Mm,
get to be a part of. One where like no idea is unwelcome and we can just apply our best in creative thinking without fear of, well, what happens if it fails? If it fails, we learn from it, right? Because we
sure.
have a safe
Yeah,
environment. So
sure.
I think that's huge. Like in terms of being able to get the best out of people and helping them feel really engaged in the work. I think that's a big piece.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for breaking that down.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think one of the things you talk about a lot too is, team dynamics and culture, and specifically centered around kind of this diversity piece, right? Diversity helps with diversity of thought. And one
Yep.
of the things I love about your career is how much you invest in working with female leaders, right? And so I'd love to know from your perspective, what are some of the struggles unique to women in the business world? And
Yeah.
what are some of the things women can specifically do to prep themselves and assure themselves that they belong at the table?
Mm. Well, now we're talking about something that just makes me so happy. Well, I will start by saying this. You know this about me, but the audience probably would not. But like having grown up in kind of an extreme religious environment that made it clear that women were less than men,
Mm,
and really shouldn't have a voice, or if you had a voice, it was in a very specific way, right? Like it was very limited. I had a lot to overcome in my own journey to embracing like what I have to offer the world. And I think it's made me extra passionate about supporting women in their leadership journeys. So I think in terms of struggles, like I'll break a few of them down. I would say having your voice heard in meetings. It's just so funny because like I just don't think men worry about this. Like I don't even think this is a thing that like is even on the radar as much, like perhaps in certain instances. But I was actually just coaching a woman last month who is in tech in the Bay Area, and she had a really important meeting where she knew she was going to be the only woman in the room, which is not unusual in some parts of tech, right? And so she had some really important things to say, and she is also soft spoken in
mm,
addition to being a female, right? And so she got there early and physically got a seat like as close as possible to the person running the meeting so
hmm,
that she knew she would be able to speak up and be heard by the person leading the meeting. And I love the intentionality of that. I also hate the fact she has to do it. But I think one tip for women is like, hey, physically place yourself in a space where it's more difficult to be ignored. Like,
mm,
I mean, be intentional about that when you walk in a room. Like, you 100% belong in that room. It's not a
mm,
question of if you belong. So, like, don't be afraid to make your presence known, right? Um, I think another kind of unique struggle, I've seen men deal with this too, but I hear it a lot from women. The number of times I have heard women apologize for
mm,
inserting themselves into a conversation. Like, oh, I'm sorry, but could I add something here? Like, don't ask permission to give your thoughts and opinions that you're being paid to give. Like do it. There's no I'm sorry's. It's like you belong and your voice is needed. So the question actually isn't, do I belong at the table? I think the question is actually, how can I add value at this table? Like, you proceed from a belief that you belong, even if the people in the room don't believe it.
mm.
That's what I say to women. I'm like, you believe that you belong and you act accordingly.
I
So
love that.
you've got value to add. And
Mm,
so it's just a matter of what is the value and where do I need to add it. Um, so I also think another unique challenge is having the credit for ideas that women bring forward be taken by men in the room, right? Like,
mm,
I could sit here and say, hey, we should do this. And then 5 minutes later, Jeff surfaces the same idea and the whole room's like, what a great idea, Jeff, and if I were to speak up and be like, yeah, hey Jeff, that's exactly what I said 5 minutes ago, like I would be viewed as like emotionally fragile for needing to
mm.
or wanting credit, right?
Right.
What I think is really powerful in those moments where people observe that, and I mean, women always are tuned in, but even I think men are starting to be much more thoughtful about recognizing that.
Mm,
And when it happens, like you go out of your way to give credit to the person whose idea it was. So even something simple like, oh yeah, Jeff, that's what Chelsea said earlier. It doesn't
mm.
have to be combative, but it's like
Sure.
it's a recognition of,
Acknowledging
oh no,
acknowledging the person's idea. Yeah.
yeah,
To be
it,
heard and seen.
totally.
That's good.
And then I think maybe the last challenge, this is an interesting one, is that I think women feel forced to choose extremes sometimes, especially in toxic or just really challenging work environments. So either they are super nice and accommodating so that they don't upset anyone, right? Or they're incredibly domineering and overbearing with something to prove in every room, and like it just becomes obnoxious, right? Like just really fighting for this place. And I honestly think the best advice I could give female leaders is be authentic and true to your own values. Like, I think when we can do that, it's going to help you be direct when you need to be direct. It's going to help you be accommodating when you need to be accommodating. Um, Always speak your truth, and your opinion, and always speak it respectfully, right? Like, I think when we start operating out of insecurity or not enoughness, oh man, like it brings out the worst in us,
Sure,
and it's not
sure.
received well, right? So I think the reality, and this is hard, but it's true, is that we have to release our desire to control people's response to us. Like, man, it's, I mean, I care about that. I think as human beings, we care about it, but I think it's especially maybe even more felt, for women. So, you know, our job as women is not to bend over backwards to be liked. You know, that's not what it's about in the workplace. It is to always be respectful. But our job is to bring our expertise and talents into any space in a way that adds value, knowing that we have nothing to prove.
I love that. No,
So,
I love that, and I love that you're very passionate about that, right? As you know, Red Door is a minority-owned business, and it's really important to celebrate diversity across the board,
mhm,
right?
it is.
It's
It makes
something that
everything better.
it does, it does. It also
Mhm.
challenges you as well
It
to
does.
see things from a different perspective, but you have to listen in order to hear that,
Mhm.
right?
You
And
do.
so I would love to, talk a little bit more about your coaching business in
Yeah.
terms of what you love about coaching leaders, because I think there's a lot that goes into that as you just use the example of coaching that woman in the
Mhm.
Bay Area and helping her, giving her the tools to being a woman at the table,
Yep.
things of that nature. But what do
Yep.
you say to a leader who feels like coaching is good for other people, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of the theme of this is as a leader really being in tune and in touch with yourself, but
Yeah,
really
it is.
listening to your team.
Yeah, it is. I mean, people who say that coaching is good for other people, I would ask them, "Hey, do you still wanna be the same person that you are today in 5
Mm,
years?"
that's
Like,
good.
some people do. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people do, but most people would say no, right? Like, I just I think there's this weird sense that leaders can get sometimes that like, "Oh, I've arrived, right? I've got it now." Coaching's for someone who's earlier in their
Mm,
career.
mm,
Yes, and, like,
yeah.
I am of a firm belief that coaching is for everyone.
Mm,
So, it doesn't matter if you have the formal title of a leader or not. You're every single person is influencing people every single day. So the question is, in what way?
sure.
And that's where, coaching really comes in handy. So I think it's like, hey, if we're going to continue to really evolve, I mean, you were talking about like change earlier, like it is as certain as death and taxes. Change is coming for us at every turn. And so I hope that I'm being coached, long after I quit working even. I mean, how
Sure.
fun to continue
Yeah.
to grow and transform, right? And I think that's the part that's really energizing about coaching is actually watching people get to the answers on their own and
Mm,
realizing, "Oh my god, I actually knew what to do all along." Like, and I think many of us, especially women, have been taught or told not to trust your instincts. And my job as a coach isn't to tell people what to do, it's to ask really powerful questions that help get people to the answers or to even just what is the next step to take, like
mm,
on their own. Like, I just believe people have everything they need inside of them, right? And sometimes
yeah.
it just takes like a little help to unlock some of that. So I just love it when the lights come on for people and true transformation takes place. Like, I've coached people out of organizations before. Not I didn't set out to do that intentionally, right? But like my job is to meet people where they are and like through a series of questions people come to realize like I'm not in the right place. Like
Mm,
no wonder I'm so freaking miserable. Like, my values aren't aligned with this organization. I'm not valued. Like, what am I doing here? And so, just to be able to help people even move on to what's next for them is just a really cool thing to watch people because that takes courage, right?
it
So,
does.
I just think it's all about growth and in watching people transform. It's
I
like
love
it's
that.
what energizes me.
I love that. It's so clear. I mean, you've grown leaps and bounds as a leader, and you're helping to coach other people to A, lead themselves and lead others.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap up here, what is one thing, so if someone is in a new position of leadership, if they've been in leadership for a long time, if they're feeling stagnant, if they're feeling that they need help, what is one thing that you could recommend today to a leader that they can do differently?
Oh man. Um, I feel like pain is a powerful motivator. And so I would identify like where are you feeling the most pain?
Hmm,
And then and use that to make a shift, right?
hmm,
Like just
that's good.
a 3-degree shift, right? I think that sometimes we're like, I gotta fix the whole situation, and it's just simply not true. Like what is important is forward motion of some kind and that you not feel paralyzed and stuck.
Ooh,
And
that's a good
so
word.
what is the thing that is causing you to take up a lot of mental space? And if you need to reach out to somebody to ask for some support or a second opinion or pick up the phone and call somebody, just to go, hey, I'm dealing with this thing. Here's the impact of it. Like, help me think through how to move forward, right? Like, so don't solve the whole thing. I would just say don't look to solve the whole problem, but what is one behavior that you can shift, one behavior that you can take, to help you start the process. I think part of the problem is we never start, so just get started.
That's good advice. I love it. Let's move forward. Amy, this has been a great combo. Thank you for being open to come on to Open Door, and just thank you for your expertise and sharing your wisdom and knowledge.
Oh my gosh,
So,
thanks for having me anytime.
yeah,
I appreciate it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if what Amy shared today resonated with you, I'd encourage you to look up Flashpoint and learn more about the work that she and her team are doing with leaders and organizations. And do me a favor, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe that's a founder who's grinding through a hard season, or a leader on your team who's figuring out how to make their way. Drop a comment too. What's the thing that keeps you grounded right now when everything feels like it's moving too fast? That's it for this one. We'll see you next time.